that you can have inspired by the psychedelic experiences. In particular, one of the most fascinating psychedelics on the horizon right now, it's floating, well, horizon, nothing, it's around, is something called MDMA, which doesn't have the wild visual effects and the emotional highs and lows that LSD, the most powerful psychedelic we're aware of, can provide. And this more manageable focus seems to apparently lend itself to a smaller range of feelings, or a tendency to focus on feelings. It makes it a much more manageable thing. People are dying or killing other people, not to mention the soul waste that occurs for the lack of that perspective. Okay. And from the lack of a sense of supportive connection. And while there are other ways of doing it besides the psychedelics under structured circumstances can help. And this is, how do you put a price on something like that? Is this coherent? Okay. All right, what I've been talking about so far is the psychedelics at this point are dealing with intra-psychic, internal to the individual stuff. Christopher Lasch wrote this book in '78 called The Culture of Narcissism, which said that the way, what do you call it, postmodern capitalism, late capitalism, is developing in the West, in the United States, that where corporations can slice and dice whole physical communities at will and for profit, that it's become practically adaptive to start acting like the Beth Jarretts of the world, the syndrome that shrinks would call pathological narcissism. And narcissism so intense, we call it pathological. But if you're being treated like a moron to be manipulated by somebody who lives on the 86th floor in another state, it may be a measure moronic, to be trusting and wonderful, everything's going to be fine, At this point, what I want to start talking about is political action. Okay, the substance of what gets involved in interpersonal connections. Okay. The whole structure of this presentation has been, in some reason, the two parts, has been from the most objective to the more personal. Okay, I started out with what the psychedelics are. That's straightforward. What they do, we can get a high degree of consensus about, although it's agreed upon, it's hard to articulate. Here I've been offering up this ethical standard, okay, with the provisions about what are the boundary conditions of whether people are going to identify with a community enough that they're going to want to share, okay. What I want to broach right now is a concrete example of a particular kind of interpersonal action that individuals, could use to develop their sense of community, to become more responsible. Now, this is Charlie's trip. Okay, this is what I'm doing. You may disagree. This is not the, the opinion of Ann Arbor Cable Public Access or even Anna Walsh necessarily. Okay, but I do want to say that everybody's invited. Okay, that I want to toss it out. Okay. Gosh, Anna, did you know that under federally mandated guidelines for minimum sentencing, an individual with as little as 1 gram of LSD is sent to jail, if convicted, for a minimum of 5 years with no hope of parole whatsoever? I bet you didn't know that. It's true. And if you exceed 100 grams, including, just the medium, LSD is this molecular substance. If you put it sometimes in a blotter, a heavy paper, that increases the weight. You get over 100 grams, suddenly you go to 10 years. And you don't get to negotiate it. Standard parole, would allow you out after maybe 6 years, 2/3 of your sentence. Congress, in its infinite wisdom, decided, let's hit everybody. The I don't want to call them the sadistics here, you get into crack, they're comparing it as being comparable to the psychedelics, which are wildly different animals. But they're simplifying and saying they're all bad, okay? You have rapists getting out earlier. You have murderers getting out earlier. Nonviolent first offenders are going to jail. Let's see, the November 8th, 1993 edition of the New York Times, I'm quoting, page A8, I've done a little homework, starts talking about how 60% of our federal prison space is filled with drug offenders. It used to be only 38%, even as recently 87. A Reagan appointee, Lawrence Irving, who was the appellate court justice in San Diego, I believe, quit, quote, in disgust over these mandatory sentencing requirements. It's draconian, his words again. Two other appellate judges refused to take, review any sort of drug cases because they hate this stuff. They absolutely hate the, these standards, which gives them no control or discretion, okay? And that, there's got to be better places for first-time, nonviolent offenders of something, of a deadhead, someone who's just trying to find a community to float around in, okay? So, my suggestion is, point of fact, rule of thumb is that if you write a letter to your congressperson, okay, your senator, your House of Representative person, and the rule of thumb is that for every single letter they get, they assume there's about 500 votes behind it. Other people who sort of felt the same way but were too bored. It's their measure of the laziness of the electorate, to vote for this thing, to support anybody who, feels the way as they say in the letter. Now, if you don't know who your representative or what district or your state representative, call your librarian, okay? Like, I gotta say something about librarians. Librarians are way cool people. I mean, they're kind of weird in a sense because they practically get the giggles out of answering questions that people really want to have answered, It's just, I don't know where they came from, but they sort of, I don't want to call them a different species. They're human, just like you and I, but they are a little different, okay? And they've fallen into this little niche out of the social ecology, and they have to act straight, because, if they get the giggles while they're at their desk, people say, what are you doing over here? So, I'm just trying to help, But call your librarian, support your librarian. They'll support you, okay? And let me toss in Peter Stafford's Psychedelics Encyclopedia, which I quoted last time. You want the third expanded 1992 edition. It has way cool resources, organizations you can write to with newsletters. Families against mandatory minimums, who aren't even necessarily into any of this other stuff. Julie Stewart is the president, is being interviewed in High Times Magazine in their March issue, which is available this February on newsstands in this area. And I strongly suggest reading it, okay? And write, Now, with that said, okay, let me take a step back. This is Charlie's trip, okay? If you feel like it, you can also toss in some lines about how maybe we ought to seriously consider legalizing or, psychedelics just for research. Research. We can't even look at these things legally, okay? It all has to be done on the black market. And people do get hurt. But, there are incredible treasures there. All right, again, Charlie's trip. You were invited, but, okay, let me take a step back. The larger goal is to find something you get jazzed about, something to get excited about. Enthusiasm, the etymology of that is to be possessed by the gods, in theistism. You've got the God in you, okay? Find something that fills you with spirit. Okay, something that you get excited about, you know, and, you know, try and connect up with people, find a community. I mean, gosh, you could go to your local cable show, you know, and put on a cable television show, okay? Or volunteer, you know, just show up and volunteer, you know, and do something. There's all these way cool things. This is part of your community. Plug into it, you know? But the goal is to become bigger. The goal is to get larger. Okay? Maybe you want to get into a big argument with people who want to, you know, qualify any of the draconian laws against, you know, the psychedelics, okay? This is an important qualification. It is important to be able to put yourself in question. Another relatively objective measure of being a big person is to not take it personally when somebody disagrees with you. That you are able to talk to people and hear them disagree with you, and try and hear them and the truth that they think is real. The more I read about Timothy Leary, the more irritated I get, because basically he was systematically trying to irritate the establishment and driving them off. I specifically am trying to find a common ground with the, quote, conservatives, with the liberal. I mean, the terms start losing their meaning after a while. But, you know, what is something everybody can consensus about in trying to take into account the criticisms that the elements that would disagree with me would want to have, okay? This half coherent? Okay. Wind up. I want to strongly suggest, you know, writing a letter, okay? If you know, call your librarian, okay? If you hear giggling in the background, it's okay, don't worry about it. You know, find out who to send it to. Find people to talk to. Find, you know, electronic bulletin boards, you know, maybe get an active public access, you know, whatever, okay? But find something that you can get juiced about. The point is to probe your environment for a community so you can grow. This is a standard, whether you use psychedelics or not, whatever, okay? And a very crucial thing throughout this whole thing is to remember to keep yourself in question. To be able, because if you can't admit that you're wrong, the problem with that is you may wind up making the same mistake forever. Okay, this is double plus on good. No, you know, don't, okay? Be able to put yourself in question. And I am reminded, logical corollary of this is the 11th commandment. Where's the camera? Hi, camera. The 11th commandment. Leave us not forget the 11th commandment. Thou shalt not take thyself too seriously. And on that note, I want to sing the closing song. Can I sing the closing song?
Please do.
Way cool. Okay. Me, 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 me. Love is something that when you give it away, give it away, give it away. Love is something that when you give it away, you end up having more. It's just like a magic penny. Hold it tight and you won't have any. But lend it, spend it, and you'll have so many. They'll fall over the floor for. Everybody sing, come on! Love is something when you give it away, give it away, give it away. Love is something when you give it away, you end up having more. Roll the credits. Yes. It's just like a magic penny. Hold it tight and you won't have any. But lend it, spend it, and you'll have so many. You'll roll all over the floor for. Everybody! Love is something when you give it away. Give it away. Give it away. Love is something when you give it away. You end up having more. All done. That's it.
That was good, Charlie.
You like it?